I'd come across some remarkable phenomena while investigating ways of talking to the dead. Spirit voices on tape, dead men on the phone, and Mark Macy's extraordinary photographs. But I was still searching for that one piece of evidence that would transform the beliefs of the researchers into objective proof of contact with a dead person. Also, I still needed another technique to use in my experiment. I'd heard about astonishing images that researchers had received using a method called ITC, and I went to meet its leading British exponent.
Neil Fellows has been refining a version of the technique called Instrumental Transcommunication, or ITC. Simply, it uses an ordinary TV and video camera to capture images that its users claim show the dead. According to Neil, this research has resulted in some concrete evidence of electronic communications from the dead.
You have a spirit side team, allegedly. You have your earth side team. And then with the two in tune, working with the technology, it's proof for them as well as for us. They want to get across that there is a survival. Yes, we have things like mediums, but the concrete thing isn't there. Processes such as this, there is a certain more tangible element to it.
Neil showed me an amazing series of images that had been received on computers, televisions and video, each with its own incredible story.
This was part of an amazing thing that happened in 1993. It was the image of a young French girl called Anne Gounier. She'd been sending several messages through to some researchers based in Luxembourg. And then they came home one day to find an image on their computer. With a message saying who she was, where she came from, when she died, how old she was when she died, where she was when she died. There's a lot of information. That on its own isn't particularly awesome because it's a computer in somebody's home, easily faked. What makes this story all the more interesting is the fact that at exactly the same time, this image here was captured on a television screen of an ITC researcher in Germany with the same message. And here is the original photograph of the little girl as she looked.
If an image and an identical message had appeared simultaneously in two places hundreds of miles apart, the evidence was too compelling to ignore.
And were they able to check out any of the other details in the message?
Yes, they went to the local records office where she said she'd come from, and they found everything. The age she died, the year she was born, the year she died, her name, everything was there.
Was she known to any of the researchers? I mean, was there any connection in life?
No, not at all. At the time she went over, it was believed that she was then ready to start doing her work, leading to her contact years later with the ITC researchers.
I decided I had to include Neil Fellows' video loop method in my experiments on using new technology to communicate with the dead. Neil explained in detail how to set up the equipment so that it could record these images.
It's a very, very simple process. It's a matter of connecting a video camera to a television, pointing the video camera at the television and recording what the television is showing. So effectively you are creating a feedback loop. It's very similar to putting a microphone next to a speaker. So instead of the loud howl, you get a very nice swirling mist of white and blue. Best to keep your recordings to 3 minutes maximum, because you are dealing with, if you're going at 25 frames a second, you are dealing with over 4,500 frames.
So it essentially looks like static, does it, when you're looking at it?
That's right.
That sort of thing. Do you see images appear while you're taping, or is it only afterwards?
Generally, they appear after the event, when you're going through the footage frame by frame, the recording frame by frame. One session I did, I had 6 images out of 4,500 frames.
What's the next step when you find a clear image? Do you try to find maybe a picture of someone who had lived that matches that picture?
It would depend very much on where I've done it. If anybody else in the vicinity recognises the face. Remembering that we are dealing with a form of spirit, allegedly, a form of spirit communication.
Using this simple technique, Neil has successfully recorded ghostly images all over Britain.
One place that I did do was a pub in Great Yarmouth, where we captured the face, and when the owner saw it, she recognised it straight away as her father had been dead for 4.5 years. What was made more interesting was the lady was a total sceptic beforehand. She'd been a police officer, an army officer, feet very, very firmly on the ground. But as soon as she saw that, the first time I've ever seen anybody visibly pale. Took a shot of brandy and said, "That's him." Reduced a photograph, and lo and behold, there was a very, very striking resemblance.
I found it harder to see the faces in these images, but the overall evidence was too persuasive to disregard. Neil showed me many more images collected by researchers using this technique, and then suddenly he brought out an image of Jeanette Meek.
It was said that they were very, very close in life, real, original love story. And she passed away before him in 1991, and not long after, this picture came through. This is Jeanette herself here, and this is their daughter who died at an early age.
The story behind the picture was incredible, but that was not the end of it.
Did Jeanette ever attempt any other kind of contact?
Yes, she sent a letter through to the Luxembourg team to be passed on to her husband. The opening line was, "Hi there, GW."
Hi, GW. Well, it seems there are still people who do not believe in the contacts your friends are having. Here are some things which nobody except you can know.
It gave little details, very, very insignificant things to you and I, but they were details that were important enough to George Meek for him to be able to know that this was her that was coming through.
Were they the kind of things that someone could guess at, though?
No, I think one of the details that came out was about a refrigerator going wrong that was reported to them by a tenant in one of their properties.
Our tenant Debbie called to say her refrigerator was off. It must have been on a Thursday morning and had no connection with the storm we had before.
Another one was with a friend of theirs having a series of booklets delivered that were all wrong.
On April 29th, 1987, Anne Valentine wrote a letter from California saying she had not received the Magic of Living Forever booklets she had ordered, but instead had received a box of Harlequin novels. John Lathrop shut off the electricity at our rental house to put in the new light.
It's only stuff that would be familiar, mundane stuff. There was even details about how much they were charged for specific parts of the job.
He wasn't down there very long, but charged $20 service in addition to $40 for the bulbs. The charge seemed high.
And there really wasn't anyone else in their circle who could have known those things?
No, not that could have fed them the information, no.
Please, Maggie, forward this to George. He can be of great help to you all. Jeanette Duncan Meek.
Dead Jeanette Meek's letter contained very personal information that only she and George could have known about. I couldn't wait to tell Kieran that I'd found the kind of evidence he'd told me to search for.
The evidence that's provided there is fantastic because you've got exactly the sort of evidence that you require as a psychical researcher or parapsychologist. Information that the people receiving the message, they don't know the nuances of the message or they're not aware of the significance of it. What is fascinating about this particular case is that it appeared on the computer at a time in our history when email was not at its height. I believe it was in the 80s at some point. So that's an additional item that makes this really, really compelling.
After researching many different new techniques for talking to the dead, I decided which ones I wanted to use in my experiment. The next step was choosing a venue. Many of the communicators I'd spoken to said that they believed the dead were all around us. But I wanted to do anything I could to maximise my chances. So I chose one of London's most haunted locations.
The Theatre Royal, Drury Lane, is one of London's best-known theatres. It's been the home to some of the biggest West End hits for the last 150 years. But it's also home to many Theatreland ghost stories. The most famous resident ghost is the Grey Man. It seems he's the spirit of an 18th century theatre lover, and he's seen with a tricorn hat and grey cloak. I arrived at the stage door armed with electronic hardware. Parapsychologist Kieran O'Keefe was there to oversee the experiment and to check any results. First, we went down to the basement, the oldest part of the theatre. There's been a theatre on this site for nearly 400 years. The previous one burnt down in 1809. But along this basement corridor, the foundations of the old theatre still exist. We set up 2 cassette recorders to see if we could pick up any speech from the dead.
On 3. 1, 2, 3.
We arranged a similar experiment in the rotunda with a radio tuned to the static between stations and connected that to a mini-disc recorder. We followed Neil Fellows' instructions and set up the video loop at the back of the upper circle. It's the home of the resident ghost, the Grey Man, who's frequently been reported wandering past this spot. Stevie, the assistant producer, handled the technical side, watched by me and Kieran.
Okay, here's the tape that I've had with me. It's been sealed. With each item of equipment that's involved, you'd have a specialist checking the equipment prior to the setup. So if there's video cameras involved, you'd have a camera expert. Television involved, you've had a television expert, all ensuring that there has been no manipulation, no alteration of the machinery prior to the setup.
Lastly, I decided to place a digital dictaphone on one of the seats in the circle. Apparently, the ghostly Grey Man is supposed to sit here, and I wanted to know if I could pick up any message that he might want to record. So I asked if someone could leave a message, pressed the record button, and waited in silence.
Hello, is there anybody here who'd like to speak tonight?
By 2:30 in the morning, all the recording was complete and we packed up our gear. Reviewing what we might have recorded on tape would have to wait until morning. My investigation continues after the break, when I discover if my recordings reveal any voices from the dead. The previous night's experiment had given us a lot of material to sift through. We had sound recordings and videotapes to carefully analyse to see if we could pick out any inexplicable sounds or images. At the edit suite, we reviewed our material. None of the tapes from the basement or the mini-disc linked to the radio revealed anything of interest. We then checked the video loop frame by frame, searching for anything that might be an image of the dead.
Go back. Selena, what's that? Go back. That's weird. What is that?
What is that?
That's a body.
That's a body.
Like a mummified.
That's really
It's like
weird.
a mannequin.
Look, face and sort of chest area. She just suddenly appears in that burst of light. That is weird. Just for one frame and then she's gone.
Well, no, no, go back to the next frame. She starts to manifest there. Look, next shot. Bang. That's it.
Video expert Neil Fellows had told us not to look for the images, but to wait for them to jump out at us. So we followed his instructions. But the images didn't leap out at both of us at the same time. Something caught Stevie's eye, but I couldn't see anything at first.
See there? That's the lip.
You said that's the lips?
Yeah, if you look at it, step all the way back like this. See the nose, there the eyes, and it comes down to a mouth.
Stevie clearly saw the image of a man's face.
It looks very much like a human face.
Yeah.
Very much.
Right,
my!
especially when you
And
pull
now
out.
when you pull out,
Yeah,
it's
wow.
right there. Now it looks as clear as a photo. Your mind does play on tricks on you though, because when I first looked at that, I couldn't see anything. And now I can't not see it. It's so strange.
Yeah.
The images we saw on the screen did look to us like something, but were they really images from beyond the grave? Or were we just seeing faces in swirls of colour and light, the same way we see pictures in the clouds? We sifted through the thousands of individual frames we'd recorded, and suddenly a face jumped right out at both of us. We could clearly see a man's eyes, nose, lips and beard.
I mean, that one, so we're thinking that's mouth and there's sort of beard, nose, eyes. That one to me looks even clearer.
Could this image be the face of the grey man? The last recorder we checked was the dictaphone left in the upper circle, said to be haunted by the grey man. I had heard a strange whispering sound when I first played the track back. It did sound like a voice, but I couldn't make out what was being said.
I heard it really clearly when did you hear it there?
Yeah,
It sounds like someone whispering.
I wanted to use the Edit's audio facilities to isolate and intensify the sound.
It's just that one little bit.
It's definitely something.
There's a sniff comes here, and then there's something.
We cleaned up the whisper and removed any interference.
That's the sniff, or what I'm calling the sniff. And then right there, you see where that peak is? It's that peak and that little one next to it.
We then applied the pitch shifter to the sounds to intensify the voice and make it easier to pick out any words.
That sounds quite sinister. Sounds a bit like salt mine.
Yeah, something tiny.
It's all mine. What do you think it sounds like?
Then it sounds like it's your time.
Oh my god, it's so clear.
Let's get out of there for a second. The first thing I'm trying to figure out is how did that sound that sounds so much like a voice turn up on the tape when I was the only person standing there with the dictaphone and there was no one else within 40 feet of me. It's such a strange irony that should be what it sounded like, given that that was the phrase Judith mentioned that she would least like to hear.
I did a recording and a voice said, "It's Bernard's time," and a week later he died. And that alarmed me because I thought, God, what if they one day come through and say, "It's your time"?
I've just
I wouldn't
gone
want to hear
cold.
that.
Hearing that voice on the tape was chilling. How did it get there? And could it really have been the voice of the grey man who reputedly haunts the theatre? This investigation has thrown up some of the most bizarre stories I've ever come across. And I have no doubt that the subject of communication with the dead is one that will continue to fascinate everyone alive today, if only because one day they'll be dead themselves.
It's the brand new Underdog Show tomorrow at 9. Canny canines and their celebrity friends all jump through hoops competing for that furry crown. And coming up right after the break, it's Most Haunted. Don't you go anywhere.